Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, I'm William Harris. I'm the founder and CEO of Element and the host of the Up Arrow Podcast, where I feature the best minds in e-commerce to help you scale from 10 million to 100 million and beyond, as well as help you up arrow your business and your personal life. Today, I have Jessica Curdi. Jessica has over 15 years of experience working on consumer brands in the fashion and beauty space, including StriVectin, L'Oreal, and YNAP, helping them reach growth objectives through e-commerce and digital marketing transformation. Her expertise spans brand awareness, growth and acquisition, and retention and loyalty. She is currently the VP of Digital Marketing at The Beauty Bank, an innovative beauty brand incubator, leading digital marketing strategy across the growing portfolio of brands. Jessica, I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah, nice to talk to you, Will. I'm excited to be here too.
You were introduced to me, this is the first time, by my brother, Michael Harris, the founder of Bamboo Software, because I believe you guys studied at ESSEC, which we'll get to a little bit below. But Michael, thanks for the introduction here.
Thanks, Mike.
Cool. So I want to get into the meat here. There's some really good stuff that we're going to be talking about. You went from 9 million to 25 million with StriVectin. Before we dig into that, I do want to announce our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with one that sold for nearly 800 million and one that IPO'd recently. You can learn more on our website at element.com, which is spelled ELUMYNT.com. That said, on to the good stuff. 9 million to 25 million in about 2 years with StriVectin here. How? What was the process?
Well, I will just preface that to say that was obviously not me alone. We had an absolutely winning team over there with amazing products. We had a great consumer experience on the website. Really, really strong clinicals. It is a clinical beauty brand. So it was really whatever the opposite of a perfect storm is. It was just the perfect situation for me to step into and really build a digital marketing strategy. That said, from my perspective, really what I came in at the very beginning was just and this is, it's so basic, but take a beat and just understand the lay of the land and understand the foundation that you're working with. I know it's very tempting to sometimes come in and act immediately. That's not my style, and I don't necessarily recommend it for anyone. But what I really did was just come in, understand the lay of the land, and then just start rebuilding the different pieces of the foundation channel by channel. Starting with our digital marketing agency, we were working with an agency at the time that was, great at certain things. We actually kept them on to do other parts of our marketing, but we then transferred all of our digital marketing to an expert agency, let's call it, that really understood the nuances of digital marketing, performance media, what it meant to build a strategy that was focused on conversion and ROAS and not just reach and impressions. It's an easy trap to fall into. So that was kind of phase one. Then from there, just evaluating some other parts of our MarTech stack. So we switched our email ESP to something that was just a little bit more intuitive and more appropriate for the business. We launched SMS marketing. We just really starting from scratch. We felt like we laid this foundation, and then we went up from there.
Well, and I like the foundation approach. There's a really good book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell, and he talks about this idea. It's and I'm going to butcher the quote, but something along the lines of, anyone can steer the ship, but only a captain can chart its navigation, right? And it's this idea, but this idea of you have to know where you're going, and in order to know where you're going, you have to kind of know the lay of the land, and you have to know where you are in order to know where to go from here.
Yeah,
he tells this story about these two captains that were trying to reach the South Pole first. And one took all the time in the world to plan it and learn from Eskimos about how to dress appropriately for the weather. And the other person didn't. Kind of was just I'm just going to go for it. I know enough. I've done enough, and felt like he could just rely on his intuition with that. And one of them made it, and the other team unfortunately died. And so this can be life or death in some situations, of that idea of figuring out the foundation and going from there.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I really like e-commerce is that it is not life or death, but
That's
absolutely
fair. That's
relevant.
fair. You mentioned that there are digital agencies that know what they're doing and those that don't, and finding the right agency. How did you go about figuring out if an agency, the RFP process, there's so much that can go into this and figuring out whether somebody does or doesn't. How did you determine how you find the right agency through that?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely one of the important parts of understanding. Like during the RFP process, I think that there's a lot of different variables that we're looking at in terms of when we're comparing the different agencies. It's a small world, so word of mouth is absolutely like kind of the number one. Like,
Totally.
who have you worked with? Like you reach out to your network and you get some great agencies. But the thing is, to your point, like not every agency is good for every company. Everyone has the kind of their sweet spot. So understanding if they have experience with businesses that are at your stage of maturity or at your size, I think that's like really basic. Just talking like kind of marketing philosophy, like how do you approach creative? How do you approach, campaign structure? It helps when it helps when you know what the right answers are or what the answers you're looking for are. But just kind of understand. And then of course there's always like there's a personality fit. There's an expectation. Some people want to hire an agency and let them do everything. Some people want to get really hands-on and be, really involved. So making sure that all those kind of values aligned are kind of what what I would look for. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. You also talked about SMS, and you talked about bringing in, better SMS and email for better retention. When you were digging into things, was retention an issue for this brand before you guys got into this?
So it wasn't actually. So I would say, so one of the cool things about StriVectin as a brand was that it actually had a really, really great retention. The people who discovered StriVectin and used the product, because the products were really great. I will say,
Sure.
I'm here shilling for them still. I don't work for them anymore. But the products are great, and it actually we had a really strong retention. What happens though is that when you start acquiring at like that exponential rate, you're not acquiring the same types of customers. And so
Totally.
it absolutely would, follow logic that your retention rate would go down. What we were able to do is acquire customers at a much faster clip than we were doing before, but actually maintain and improve our already strong retention rate. So that's what I would say, like, that's kind of the pride that I have on that side of it. And then, we introduced SMS. It was a brand new channel to the platform. We're talking a couple of years ago when SMS was still like relatively new. But what we saw is it really helped us just break through the noise, especially at some really like key moments that are tricky, like, like Black Friday, like holiday. It absolutely helped in breaking through.
Yeah. And I think what you said there, that the concept of, sure, maybe SMS isn't as new now, but there are always concepts of how are you building up that retention. And to your point, when you started acquiring customers significantly faster than you had been before, a lot of people like to rely on historical data. And so you say, well, here's what my LTV is, here's what my CAC is, and so we're good as long as we do this. But as soon as you start acquiring people at 2, 3, 4 times the rate that you were before, all of a sudden the flip side happens on the LTV and things start, dropping off. And so being able to figure out how you grow while also still maintaining that's an impressive feat. And I think to your point, being able to use new tactics, new tools, that helps. But also just the right mindset. And I think you were talking to me before when we talked about this, is just like the creative strategy that goes into it. So whether this is in the acquisition side or on the retention side, the thought process that's going on in that back and forth between brand versus performance.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's always this kind of, from on the brand side, there's always this storytelling. We want to say, big messages about the brand. But then on the performance side, like, consumers are really looking for benefits. They're looking for results, especially within the beauty space. It's just, it's so important. So finding that balance was really critical for us. And, we did a lot of testing. We came up with a lot of different types of creative, more high level messaging, more detailed messaging, trying, all different formats, carousels. And, it was just so many, it was just like really, it sounds sloppy, but one thing that I find that really works, we just threw a lot at the wall and and let's see what works. Like, you're not going to know until you try. And what I've seen work in one place doesn't work in another place. What I've seen work 6 months ago doesn't work anymore. What I see work for one objective doesn't work for another objective. So, and I will just make a caveat to that, is that that's a strategy that really works if you do the work afterwards to do the analysis, to really understand, so that you can act on all these learnings that you're getting. Because I think that's also a kind of a hole in a lot of marketing strategies. Like, okay, we did all this stuff. Now what? What's next? Like, how do we go from here? So I think that strategy has really worked for me, because I do have the experience, and I do have the kind of analytical background that helps evaluate.
Well, I've had enough conversations with you over the past year to know that I don't think that it was anything but sloppy. The word that you used to describe it, it was very calculated. But to your point, testing a lot of different things, even testing against things that you already are pretty sure is not the right thing, because it might be the right thing in this situation, because just because you disproved it at another company or at another business or even another department or whatever, doesn't mean that it's not going to perform here. And so going into that with that mindset, and knowing how to analyze it, I think, is the key. But having lots of those tests, we run into this all the time at our agency, where, they'll say, great, the other agency tested a whole bunch of stuff. And it's like, well, what did you learn from it? It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if this worked or not worked. They said that it didn't, so they turned it off. But there's no analysis to point back to say this did or did not work, and here's why, and here's what we know. And was this even statistically significant or not? Not that everything has to get to that point in certain businesses, but right. Some idea of some kind of statistical analysis. And you and I were nerding out over a couple of statistical analyses that I like to look at, that you said you have a good one too. Bayes' theorem is one of them, but the one that you and I both kind of relied on was Simpson's paradox, a really good illustration that you had on Simpson's paradox. Take me through this.
Yeah. So we, this is actually happening in real time. This is something that we're dealing with right now in my current role. So we're very, we just launched a couple of months ago. So we're really in that learning phase of throwing things against the wall. And there's just one asset that's just killing it on Meta. It's blowing through our budget. But it's also delivering the results. It's doing everything we want it to do. But that says we don't do just one thing within Meta, right? We are driving traffic to our website. We're trying to drive conversion. We're driving traffic to our retail partner. We're trying to build brand awareness. So we're doing a lot of different things within our Meta strategy right now. And so this one asset, while it is overall, if you just look at it, it's outperforming basically everything else. When we start digging into the different types of objectives, it is specifically, as an example, our retail partner campaign, the driving traffic to them, it's a completely different asset that's performing. One was static, the other was video. One was, social proof. One was brand messaging. I mean, it had everything about it was different. But it absolutely, in that campaign for that objective, it absolutely worked. And so, kind of to the point of what Simpson's paradox, it's if you look at the whole, you look at the whole account, you see one result, you start digging in and you start seeing really a lot of nuance.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anybody's listening and they're not familiar with Simpson's paradox, I do have a really good article about this on the Element website, which we can link to in the show notes. But, to make this the simplest way I could probably explain audibly versus being able to have the visuals here would be, the idea is, if you're segmenting things, you could see something in aggregate that is beating across everything. But as soon as you look at what we would call lurking variables, the things that are underneath there, which could be demographics, campaigns, whatever this might be, you might find that a different ad is outperforming in every single one of those. Even when you look at the aggregate, it's this other one. And so you could be tempted to say, great, let's only run that one. Let's turn off all these other ones, even though those other ones might actually be getting the result that you want. And so you have to be careful about making aggregate analyses and extrapolating that out to just everything else.
Yeah. Great description.
Yes. So you also talked about one of the biggest challenges that you ran into, not just at StriVectin, but just in general, would be how to educate non-digital colleagues and leadership about the things that are going on in the digital world, especially with a lot of changes. What have you found to be tips or tricks that have made you successful in making those kinds of communications?
Yeah, I would say it's hard, and I can't say that I've completely completely nailed this.
Sure.
But I would say just like a couple of things. It's really honing in on like basic messaging, right? Like absolutely, like starting to throw around CAC and LTV and ROAS and click-throughs, starting to throw out
Sure.
jargon absolutely just isn't a winning strategy in this mind. It just overwhelms people. It doesn't influence at all. But really trying to like take anything that we've learned and distill it into like one or two key things to explain like why we're going a certain way and building that trust. And eventually, like those people are generally not going to become digital marketing experts. That's why they hired me. that's why I'm here, to be the digital marketer. But it's really about just building that trust, giving the data, being really transparent, but in a way that's like very digestible, that kind of helps build those relationships, and therefore just like, allows that trust to grow, and then you can keep doing what you got to keep doing. But
yeah. One of the ones that I know you and I were talking about that can be sometimes hard is that idea of, let's just say, CAC to LTV ratios, even specific for creative, right? So when you're looking at it, not just by channel, but even getting into the granularities of the individual creatives as well. What are some ways that you have found that help describe CAC to LTV ratios or something along those lines to the higher ups that helps to make sense to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just an example that comes to mind is like, and again, this goes back to StriVectin. I have a lot of examples from those days, but it's a very product based strategy that we had. So like every ad was about a product, more or less. So when we're like launching a new product that was at a lower price point than our general portfolio, it was actually really successful in driving consumers at an efficient CAC, especially like within like kind of our non-core base that we were trying to attack.
Sure.
So like kind of the initial story is like, look, we're driving so much acquisition around this one product. This is a great story. Once you start following that through to like 3 months, 6 months, longer down the line, we saw that like it was harder to retain those customers than it was other customers, and we saw that the LTV wasn't necessarily there. So what does that mean? It's like, okay, yeah, I know we said that this product really worked. It did what it was supposed to do in this ad, but then this is not like a winning strategy go forward, because we're not going to maintain the same LTV that we maintain otherwise, and we should look for another way to talk to those consumers. So again, it's so much art and science. Like it's such a balance. So just being, I would say it's being really upfront about the results and being really transparent, and then just like following through and just like keeping everyone in the loop. Like it's just people feel better when they know what's going on. It's absolutely true. So
yeah, it's a science game, but it's a people game, right? And being able to have that. Have you ever seen those shapes where if you look at it from one perspective, it looks like a triangle, and then you turn it and it looks like a square, and then you turn it again and it looks like a circle? It's like really interesting shapes. Have you ever seen these?
I don't think I have.
Okay, they're wild. I need to send you a link after this.
I can kind of imagine, but
yeah. And so the way that I like to think about this, even from like customer acquisition, is that it could look like the right customer, but that's just because of the you're looking at it from a ROAS perspective or a CAC perspective, but you need more than one dimension to understand if it really is. And so if you're only looking at it two-dimensionally, you're just going to miss this. And so to your point, even when we talk about CAC to LTV, a lot of times I see a lot of agencies that'll say, well, I'm getting the right ROAS or I'm getting the right CAC. But that doesn't mean that it's the right customer. And to your point, right. Even within the individual creatives, what we've seen is a lot of people will say, this creative is outperforming the other creatives in our account because it's getting a lower CAC. But if you actually take that same creative and you look at that over the course of 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, you might find that it did a better job of acquiring those customers, but at a sacrifice to LTV. And so then you have to start saying, wait a minute, just because we're acquiring people at a better CAC or a better ROAS doesn't mean that it's better for the business. And that's a really hard thing for a lot of, let's just say, digital marketers to get behind, because they're so used to, well, this is what Facebook or Meta is telling me. This is what, Google is telling me. So this is good. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think kind of just to add to that, it also kind of follows through after the acquisition part, because, in that example that I just gave, like, we're not seeing the retention rate of that customer. So one is that we should try to look for a different customer, but the other side of that coin is like, how should we be talking to that customer differently to keep them? And then maybe there's areas of opportunity within our retention program to speak to them a different way, or to introduce them to different products that they might be more inclined to stick to. So there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts.
That's a really good point. One of the things you and I were talking about was this cataclysmic moment. And I feel like while we've talked about this a lot before, there was a moment where your job changed significantly. And the date that you called out is April 26, 2021, because of shifting.
The day that will live in infamy. Absolutely.
Right. Tell me about this date, what happened, why, and how you've adjusted your approach.
Yeah. Well, this is the date. What was the release of iOS 14.5? It was disaster for digital marketers everywhere.
Absolutely.
With the change of tracking, and it's interesting because we saw a really a noticeable dip in our performance almost immediately. And then we continued to see the decline for about 4 months, if I remember correctly. Like it was like a slow climb down, and it was just like getting more and more horrifying as we went. It was hard to swallow, because like up until then it was just, it was a little bit more formulaic, I would almost say. Like it was really easy, like I'm putting in $1 here, I know what I'm going to get out. It was just a little bit more clear, let's say. Yeah. The big thing that I think helped me kind of cope in the new reality was bringing on multi-touch attribution into the mix. So we worked with a fantastic partner tool that I love. They're FOSFA. I don't know if I'm allowed to call them.
Absolutely, you can call it anybody you want here. Yeah.
They were a fantastic partner. I loved working with them. We spoke to a bunch of different vendors for MTA modeling, but they were the right one for us, and it really helped us just understand how our investment was impacting not just at the last click, but at the multi-touch. So what we saw, and it really opened up our world in a lot of different ways, because we saw there were certain campaigns that were absolutely not driving the last click, but were absolutely imperative in the beginning of the customer journey. We saw channel like Pinterest. Pinterest was never like, it's one of those channels like, it does okay, should we do it? Should we not do it? I don't know. But we actually saw that Pinterest was like a great performer when we looked at the whole customer journey. And not only that, which was like kind of a weird, this is very specific, but like we had both performance and brand Pinterest campaigns running, and it was the brand campaigns that drove the better ROAS when you looked at it at the customer journey. So there's just so much you can learn about what's actually performing when you start looking at it like more holistically. I know GA4 offers a lot of that now. Probably not as sophisticated as a vendor, but that was absolutely, I think, the one thing that really helped us like manage this changing tide.
Yeah. And I think that was in imperative. Let's just say, while it was a difficult date for digital marketers, I also liked it because it was a necessary shakeup to come back to science. Because to your point, it kind of almost became formulaic and easy. And it was like, this weeded out a whole lot of people who didn't understand the science, and brought the people who did understand the science to say, okay, how do we do this in a better way? And so it was a difficult time, but I think it was a net positive for our space in that respect.
I love your optimism.
Yeah, that's fair. The MTA, I think, was really good. And I think along those same lines, one of the ways that we handled that was we just went back to what are the observable facts. Facts that are actually taking place are how much did you spend? Facts that are absolutely taking place are how much revenue went into the bank account. And so we can ignore, let's just say, all attribution for a moment too, and simply say, if we double spend here, what actually happens to the bank account.
Yeah.
And this works in smaller businesses. This works in areas where a doubling in spend, if you doubled your TikTok spend and it was only $10,000 a month, well, you're probably not going to see enough of a difference, right? But this worked in certain areas where if you did that, you could kind of get back to just essentially seeing the actual facts. And so this was an analog to basically saying, well, let's just do holdout tests. If we do a geo holdout test and actually find the actual incremental difference, I think that allowed us to dial in whether or not we could even trust the MTA, because I think that there's even sometimes question about, well, is the MTA accurate or not?
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. And I think that we definitely ask those questions to ourselves, like, how do we know? Like, how do we know that what we're getting out of this is actually true? But then it's like, yes, over time, the results are in the bank account. So it did, or at least it did work for us. So that was, a good sign.
Yeah. There was another thing that you were talking about now. I think the brand that you're building right now is the Rootist, right?
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, you were saying you guys moved from $0 to essentially several $100,000 a month over the course of like the first 3 months, which is very, very fast.
It is.
Tell me a little bit about the plan and how you pulled that off.
Yeah, so a lot of learnings. We launched in January on Sephora.com and on our own website, and then we've been in store at Sephora since the end of February. It's been a roller coaster. It's really fun to be working on kind of this more of a startup environment, and so going from zero to like several $100,000 in spend is. There's significant challenges. The first, I would say, is just like really administrative. Like, it sounds kind of dumb, but like when you didn't exist a month ago, nobody's giving you a credit line. Like, there's nobody's. And so we actually had a lot of like turning things getting shut on and off because like we ran out of budget here, we ran out of budget there. And it was just, it's so silly and minor to think about it, but these are things I never would have thought about that going into it. Like, it was just like, let's just go for it. Let's, we want to come out of the, the gate swinging. So let's do it. But there was absolutely some challenges with that. We launched like channel by channel with every 2 weeks. So we started with Meta, just really driving a lot of traffic. We had, obviously there's no, we didn't have any like consumer data yet to like feed into the algorithm, right? So we were really just like, let's drive traffic, like let's hone in on, what we think our core target audience is and drive them to the website so that they can start learning about the brand. We did some also like a little bit more like upper funnel investment as well. And then we launched TikTok 2 weeks later. We're very much into the hair talk space. We have lots of gorgeous girls with gorgeous hair using our product and really loving it. So it's been a great way for us to kind of, again, more on an upper funnel. Although we did test, we've tested upper to lower funnel on basically all of these different channels with different performance. TikTok for us is absolutely an upper funnel channel. And then a couple of weeks after that, we launched Google with, brand, non-brand, performance, max, just everything out of the gate. And a lot of learnings from that. And I think one of my core learnings, I would say, is just like starting from zero is not the same as a mature brand. And I know that like, yes, that's like very logical, but a lot of the assumptions that I personally made, like building out, a marketing mix model, which is like my favorite thing to do, and just like trying to understand, like forecast how we're going to perform and what we can expect, even with all my assumptions of like, okay, we're starting at zero, and we're not going to have the same benchmarks as a existing brand. Even those were just like kind of upended and, just throw them all out. Basically, I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen, right? It's a brand new company. You have no idea how people are going to take it. So from there, it's like, okay, how do you pivot and how do you pivot fast? And that's kind of where that's where we are right now. It's just like, just moving all the different pieces to try to build the best board.
Yeah. I love when people ask for a plan, let's just say like a perspectives, right? Over 3 years or something like that. And you're like, the reality, like, and these are brands that are, more or less, maybe not completely getting started, but maybe they're only doing 5 million, 10 million a year. Yeah. And it's like, well, this is assuming that you grow 100%. The plan is to grow 100% this year. The plan is to grow another 100% next year. It's like, there's so many things that could change whether or not that happens. This 3-year plan that's happening out here is completely just made up magical numbers. There's no way that we could even know if this is accurate or not.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic, but there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of logic as well. It's like, especially when,
Totally.
you and I, like when you start seeing a lot of the business, like you can make some, broad, barring like gross economic downturns or something like that, you can start
Totally.
making some smart assumptions for sure.
Yeah, like mass pandemonium things that are
Right.
happening all the time. It seems like the last few years.
Yeah.
So what, you said that's one of the things that surprised you. What's one of the things that surprised you in a good way where you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. But here we are 3 months, 4 months in, and this is doing significantly better than I would have anticipated.
Oof. I don't know what it says that I can't think of anything. No,
Or
I
just
mean, I think,
different. Yeah.
yeah, I think what I would say is just we are actually driving like a ton of traffic, right? Like we've been able to drive a lot of traffic to our brand partner. We've been to our retail partner. We've been able to drive a lot of traffic to our own website, and that's part of building brand awareness when you're at zero. So I think the ability to do that in a more efficiently than I had anticipated, I think is like kind of a really big win for us in these first couple of months. So I'm happy about that. Mm-hmm.
And I like hearing that you guys are doing that, because I feel like a lot of times people still downplay brand awareness and traffic campaigns. At least in the D2C space, it gets, I don't know, people get crazy. We still very much appreciate them and encourage them, the necessity of them, not just in the beginning, but even ongoing throughout the life cycle of your business, because there's still different roles in which those play. Even just from the idea of like the CPM on a reach campaign versus the CPM on a purchase campaign, they're massively different. And sometimes the goal is you just need to reach more people, and then that can begin to fill in your conversion campaigns. And so,
exactly. I mean, and that was kind of our strategy, is like, okay, we know it's going to take more than one ad to get people to buy our products. So like, let's get them to the website so we can get them into our retargeting pool and send them another 2, 3, 4 ads afterwards. So, and then finally they will convert. But that, that type of building that kind of frequency takes time, and building the right campaigns takes time, and learning the learnings takes time. So 3 months in, we've got a lot of learnings, but we still got definitely a lot more to go.
Yeah. Is there one key thing that you would take away from this that you would say, in the next time that I take somebody from zero to $200,000 a month in spend, this is the one thing that I want to make sure that I put together in my plan ahead of time?
I mean, like making sure we have the money like flowing properly,
Sure.
I think is literally, I mean, was really one of our biggest challenges. And then I think just having just with experience, right? Like having the better benchmarks, just having the right expectations, and a big part of driving traffic, in addition to building our retargeting pools, is also about building our email list and like finding other ways that are non-paid of like keeping up the communication with people. So finding maybe more aggressive ways of building that list from the very beginning. I think that would be those would be like two points of action.
I like that. I know one of the other things that you really like is just overall attribution discussions. It's something that you and I have geeked out over. How do you approach understanding if the traffic and awareness that you're driving towards Sephora as opposed to your own D2C website is worth it?
That is a great question, because I really think it depends who you ask.
Totally.
I think if you ask me, I'm going to have a very different answer than probably what our sales team would say. But I think once you start having like a significant or more sophisticated look at attribution, I wouldn't say that I have this data right now. Like that is something, I'd love to have, but I don't think I have it. Once you start seeing, once you do have kind of maybe more sophisticated tools or whatever, those campaigns that you're driving to Sephora, they're part of they're going to be part of your, total attribution, experience. So you can absolutely see like the kind of halo that any type of ad is going to perform, even if it's not driving to your own website. I mean, that's really the point of a brand awareness campaign overall. Like we all know that like a meta brand awareness campaign has a click-through rate of like -0. It's like you're gonna have like no traffic is gonna come out of that, but the investment is there and the investment does something, and we know that. So I think it has a very similar to driving traffic to anywhere else. But yeah.
Yeah. I think to your point, the data is not there. It's too early to tell. One of the things that I know that we like to do in situations like that, when a brand is all of a sudden, hey, they just landed in Target or Sephora or wherever, is getting those sales reports. And we even will run holdout tests for them as well too, and say, it's like, okay, great, we're going to run the brand awareness campaign now in these geos, but not in these geos, because I want to see what the store reports actually say different here as well. And I think to your point, like that overall MTA, it plays out not just in the D2C site, but it plays out in the stores, and being able to do whatever you can to assess whether or not it's driving actual real conversions there over the longer period of time, I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's actually, it's interesting you brought it up, because it's something that's been top of mind recently. And I was just like, should we start thinking about delivering ads that drive to store? Like, forget about Sephora.com, forget about ours. Like, let's drive people like through a door. But then it's like, there's trade-offs, right? Like we are still a small brand with a small budget. So it's like, where do we not spend in order to do that test or to do that? And those are hard questions. And I still haven't been convinced that would be the right way for us to go, but it's definitely something like to think about. It's like every month they ask a question, should we try this? Is it better to drive people to the store? Is it better to, drive people to sign up for email rather than, make the conversion today? Like these are all trade-offs, especially when your budgets are still on the lower side.
Yeah. Like you said, they're all trade-offs. And I think to your point that you made earlier, with all of the different testing, the key is just, are you going to learn something from it? And so it's okay to do the test, but as long as you set it up in a way that you can actually learn from it, and you say, it's definitively better or it's definitively not better. It's still a good learning experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it doesn't always happen, but that's the goal.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand that you guys also recently acquired Amare. From your perspective, as somebody who's going to, run ads for some of the companies that you guys acquire, what is the thing that excites you about working on an acquisition as opposed to working on a startup?
So this company in particular, I find just to be really interesting for a lot of reasons. It's so first, Amare is a supplement company that specializes in mental wellness and the connection of the gut-brain axis. So it's a really different business overall. Yes, it's CPG. Yes, it's D2C. Yes, it's all those things, but it's a different product. So it's a different way of talking about it. And, just having a different objective. We're not worried about like the look of your skin. We're talking about your mental wellness, and that's something that's like a little bit deeper. So that, from that perspective, it's super interesting. And then also just the model of the business. It's an MLM business. So it is like a very different model. So I'm excited to jump in. This is a very new, a new acquisition for us. So I'm excited to jump in and start like understanding this business model, but also just like how we can, build the business within like a very different set of constraints.
Yeah, I like that. We've covered a lot of topics, a lot of ground. I want to get into the personal side of who is Jessica Curdi, but before we do, what other advice or tips would you like to give to people who are looking at this that we maybe didn't cover, that I didn't ask?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think I probably sound like a broken record because we kind of did cover it, but like I would just like really emphasize the analytics, which is like of understand, like spending money or spending time doing anything and then not really understanding how you're going to measure it, like having hypotheses before running tests, like having that kind of structure is like absolutely important. And if you don't have it, I don't want to say you're wasting money, but you're definitely not using your budgets like to their best. So if you don't, if you're in digital marketing and you're not an analyst, not everybody is, like, I think finding a partner, finding somebody who is able to like provide that data for you or provide those insights is just absolutely imperative.
Yeah. I love that you went with a reiteration instead of something new. And the reason why is because that leads very well into the first question that I wanted to ask you about when we get into the personal side of who is Jessica Curdi.
Sure.
From what I understand, you did not have the same normal bedtime stories that everybody else did. And so this will make sense on why you went for your default of getting back into the analytics. Tell me about the bedtime stories you had as a kid.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did have some bedtime stories, of course, but like my father, my dad is, he's a computer developer, software developer. And I definitely get my math brain from his side of the family. And so at 8 years old, rather than, reading stories, although we do like, we both are avid readers, so we'd read together too. He would, sit next to me in bed and teach me algebra at 8 years old. So that was that was my foray into higher level mathematics at 8.
I mean, that's fantastic, though. And again, that explains why. It's like, well, obviously, there's maybe some genetic component to, I don't know where the line is genetics for people being able to understand math, but it's like, okay, your dad has a math brain. There's a good chance that you probably have a math brain as well. But being told about algebra at 8 as you go to bed, I mean, I don't know that I've heard anybody else that does that, but it makes sense on why you would immediately go to like, analytics. This is what I work on.
And I think the flip side of that too is not only was he teaching me, I was excited to learn. And I think there's very few 8-year-olds who'd be excited to learn about algebra.
That's very true. What about books and podcasts? I always like to ask people about this. And when I asked you about this, you were like, yeah, I have some pretty strong opinions about literary stuff. What are these strong opinions that you hold about literary elements?
Although I am like by no means like an English literature connoisseur by any stretch of the imagination, I am a little bit of a snob, I guess, in my taste in books. So I tend to like 18th century like French and Russian literature. Wow. I write and just like to illustrate my snobbiness, I guess, or my ambition, let's say. After my first child, my daughter was born, I decided the best thing to do for some light reading was to pick up War and Peace.
Sure, light reading.
Nice light bedtime reading while the baby naps. Granted, it took me a year to get through. It took me a long time. I did not have a lot of time as a new mom, but that was definitely my ambition, and it worked out well because I got the name of my son from that book. So. My second child. Yes.
Very cool. Do you mind sharing that?
Oh yeah, his name is Anatole. So there was a Prince Anatole in My Little Prince.
Very cool. That is like you said, the not snobbiness or whatever, but like you're just reading this silly little American classic. Let me get into some really deep stuff here.
Yeah.
What other books do you like to read then?
I do read like. I do like to read mostly fiction. I don't have patience for nonfiction or biographies. I don't know why. It's just not my thing. But my all-time favorite, which is like a complete departure from everything I just told you about literature, is it's a peek into my more nerdy side. Is my favorite book of all time is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've read it. I don't know, probably 10 times at this point, and I'm probably about time for a reread at this point. It's been a while, but I love that book.
Yeah. So what's the answer to the universe? Right. So what's the answer to the universe, right? Isn't that from that one?
Yeah, it's 42.
40, obviously. I mean, We should have known that.
Right. So the question is, what's the question?
Yeah, right. Okay, so I have one more question for you about numbers here. This is off the cuff here, but I just want to see if it plays out there. If I was going to ask you to pick a random number, the most random number that you could think of between 1 and 100, so the number that is not your favorite number, right? Okay. Like I don't want you to pick your favorite number or like the number that you had in sports or something, but like the number that you're like, nobody else would pick this. This is the most random number that I could think of between 1 and 100. What number would you pick?
27.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's close. Apparently the number one answer. There is. This was on a Veritasium video where the number one answer that people pick typically in that is 37. And the second most picked number is 73, that everybody's like, nobody would pick these numbers. And yet that is the number that most people pick. So you got it with the 7, and 7 being one of the ones that we considered to be the most random.
Interesting. I'm really curious what the psychology behind that is.
It is good. I won't go into it here. Everybody should just watch the Veritasium video. But it is very interesting. So you're close there, but okay, 42. Maybe it's not 42. Maybe the answer is 37.
Maybe.
What about I understand that you like to travel a lot, and you had a really interesting trip to Costa Rica. But any fun stories from traveling here that you'd want to share?
Man, I've had some really good trips. We did a 2-week a 2-week road trip across Costa Rica. So that was really just like a wonderful experience. It was my first and only foray into surfing, which is, if you're going to do it in Costa Rica. There's not a better place.
Nice.
I was not good at it. But I'm glad I tried. I can check it off the bucket list. We also did a week drive through Kenya as a safari, which was just really, really incredible. Just seeing all the animals. And we had this wonderful guide. His name was George. He was awesome. And he, we were of course excited. We went there. We were excited to see the lions and the zebras and the giraffes and everything. This guy had a passion for birds that was just so contagious that by the end of the trip, I was like, oh my God, did you see that one? The birds were just the highlight of the trip. And it was really just actually wonderful to see somebody who was clearly just so happy to share his passion. We have a lot of cool birds here in Texas. So I'm always on the lookout now too. So
I actually heard them chirping a little bit there in the background, which was very peaceful. That was very nice. But who knew that you were going to go to Africa to become an ornithologist, huh?
Never know what thank you.
Right. I also know we were talking about this before. Which is your favorite city that you've lived in? Because you've lived in New York City, Paris, Montreal, Dallas. I mean, you've seen a whole lot of different places. Which one's your favorite and why? Oh
gosh, I will always live for Paris. I'm such like a cliche American that I was dreaming about Paris since I was a kid, and then I finally had a chance to go, which is again how I met your brother. So, it's my absolute favorite city in the world. Just there's something magical about the light there, walking there, the street, everything is just so much more charming.
So, tell me a story about Mike. Let's just get a story out here for all the world to hear.
Oh gosh, well I'll pick something tame. But
if you choose, I would rather not tame, but I guess if we have to.
Get in trouble. You don't have to go tell your mother on him.
Mom.
I mean, the first day that I met Mike, actually, so we had been, we went to business school in Paris together. That's how we know each other. And we'd been in touch for the few months prior, just over, chat or whatever, emails, and getting to know each other, which was cool because we were 2 of maybe 5 Americans in the whole school. So we were exotic over there. And, and we were supposed to actually fly to Paris together. He was coming from Ohio, and he was going to meet me in New York, and then we're going to fly over to Paris together. And he missed his flight. His flight was delayed, and so he missed our connection. Sure. So It was not his fault. And then, so we finally regrouped at school, at our dorm, when we finally met in person, at which time we proceeded to get lost trying to find our campus. We were at the dorm trying to get campus, could not find it. Just walked around the entire city looking for it. And then we're just so exhausted and so jet lagged that we were just ripping into each other. We had just met, and we were just we could not stand it. And then we were just bought our sandwiches, went back to our rooms, had a good night's sleep, and been best friends ever since. But it was great. Yeah, we had
So wait a minute. You guys were in France, trying to find your campus. Mm-hmm. Did either of you speak French? Do you speak other languages?
I speak French now. I did not speak French when I moved there. I had, years of French education, French language education from, our very prestigious American language school. So I did not speak French when we got there. And to the point where I was actually at the airport, just landed in Paris, ready to move here, and with all of my suitcases, because I was not a light packer, and I could not figure out how to ask for help. I just could not. Sure. I was I have all these luggages. I don't know where to go. I can't pick anything up. These luggages weigh more than me. I don't know how to ask anybody for help. And I was just what am I doing? How am I going to figure this out? Oh. But I after a couple years in Paris, a couple years in Montreal, I had to learn French.
Yeah. French and Russian, right? I believe you said Russian.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm, my parents are from Russia, my whole family. I'm the first person in my family born in the US. So I unfortunately don't speak Russian very well, which is such a shame, but I understand it, so.
Yeah. So should I say ça va or should I say как dela?
You can say either. I can answer either way. Ça va.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. Don't go too fast for me now. I'm not that good. What about show and tell? I always like to see if anybody has anything in their office or anything that they like to show off and tell about. Is there anything that you have to show and tell?
Oh gosh. Okay. I can show. Actually, I don't. It's not a thing, but so you know how most people have like to-do lists. Okay. This is my to-do pile.
Nice.
So I like to keep it within my eye line so that I can really stress myself out about everything I'm not accomplishing. But just I can hold on. I'll put it down and I can just demonstrate a little bit of it. I have several books to read. Including some F. Scott Fitzgerald and a book about fonts.
Everybody should have a book about fonts. I will say we did like where you answer questions at a bar. Why am I drawing a blank?
A trivia night?
Thank you. Yes, a trivia day. So my wife and I did a trivia date the one time, and I'm really bad at like normal pop trivia, which a lot of this was, but then they had like the speed round for fonts and I nailed that one. Okay. I was like, oh, I'm such a nerd. But it's okay. A book about fonts, I like it.
Yeah. And then I have one Vogue magazine just to really show the spectrum of my personality.
Love it.
A jigsaw puzzle, a rainbow jigsaw puzzle, and it's a matryoshka.
Oh yeah.
It's from Russia. It's from my childhood. It is like I can't believe it's survived all this time and I have all the pieces, but there's a lot of them in here. So yeah, I have my little stress-inducing to-do pile.
Well, yeah. Not that you're. We've talked about this. You're a new mom, fairly new mom. You've got 2 young kids, so not that you don't have anything going on in life besides your work and taking care of the kids. So you have to have all these extra things that you want to add to your list.
Of course.
What makes you magical?
What makes me magical? Oh, I love this question. I can dance in almost any situation. I will find a way to dance. I might also sing, but it's better if I don't sing for everybody else. But I can dance in any situation.
Okay. I'm gonna put you to the test here. Roll out the barrel. We'll have a barrel of fun, right? Okay, all right. Even with polka, we got it. This is good. This has been a lot of fun. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to ask that I missed here. Can you think of anything else?
No, I don't know. I feel like we covered a lot of ground.
We covered a lot. Jessica, if people are listening here and they want to connect with you or work with you in some way, what's the best way for them to follow you and hear more about your thoughts and who you are?
Yeah, I would say you can look me up on LinkedIn. Jessica Curdi is a pretty unique name, so it's basically just me out there. So you can find me pretty easily.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day today to share your knowledge, your wisdom with us, your personality, your dance moves, all of the above.
Thank you, Will, so much. It was so much fun talking with you today.
Yeah, and everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.